Hey guys, bringing you another guide here. I'm going to do a few, actually. It's just Thanksgiving weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Came down with a bit of a cold, so I'm going to probably not be playing any games right away, but I did want to get some guides out. And what I'm going to do, actually, is go ahead and kind of do the intros. Let me turn the game sounds down a little bit. Go ahead and do the intros, the descriptions kind of over a couple heroes, including Zeratul here. And then later on, either this weekend or early next week, go ahead and get some gameplay in, but that won't be up right away. So you have these part ones first. Normally I do part one and part two together, but we're going to split it up a little bit just to get some content out there for the weekend for everybody. So you have some guides you can at least put into play, and then I'll have my gameplay videos up if you want to go ahead and look at how I put the guide into action. So without further ado, let's get into Zeratul, the Dark Prelate, the melee assassin from StarCraft 2. One of my, if not my favorite hero, definitely one of my favorite heroes to play in Heroes of the Storm. He's a unique character and a lot of fun. I think there's a high skill level or skill ceiling on him. Ton of fun to play. He is cloaked, of course, and so you can see his trait: become invisible while not attacking or taking damage. Let me bring up my spreadsheet here. I believe it's a 2-second cooldown. Yeah, out of combat from taking damage or channeling anything. Like if you're trying to, if you're Hearthstoning and going back to the Halls of Storm, you're revealed. If you're mounting, you're revealed. So it's a 2-second cooldown in there to your cloaked. And then it's similar to Nova. Now, I have noticed Zeratul seems to be a little bit easier to see than the Nova. And another thing to note is when you're mounted, your hitbox is going to be slightly larger because of the mount. So if you're really trying to evade detection, it's a good idea to be on foot, to actually walk around and go that way versus actually moving faster on the mount. It's a little bit more revealing of your character when you're in vision range of others. And so we'll show off the cloaking game. It's a really cool ability, and it blends well into his basic abilities here. You've got the cleave, which has a 6-second cooldown. It's 40 mana cost. It does 75 damage at level 1 plus 17 per level, so you're doing 398 base damage with this at level 20. And that is in a radius around your hero. So you can catch multiple people. You can catch an entire wave of minions with the cleave. It's a really cool ability. His W is his skill shot, the Singularity Spike. It's a mana cost of 60 with a cooldown of 12 seconds. Now it'll slow and damage the first enemy it hits. So it doesn't hit multiple enemies. It'll just hit one unless you get an upgrade with the talents. But this will actually, it does quite a bit of damage, and it slows. It's 100 damage at level 1, 20 per level, up to 480 at level 20. And it's a 40% slow over 3 seconds. Really cool. And hitting these is a big part of Zeratul. You can kill people, you can slow them down so you can catch up and your team can catch them. It's a big core component to playing the man. And then you have Blink, his E, his kind of dash, his escape, and kind of an engage too. It's 75 mana with a cooldown of 10 seconds, and you teleport to a location. Using it does not break cloak. So if you're cloaked and you blink, you are not revealed. And that is super important. You can actually use this to kind of get in. You can go behind enemy lines. Member towers will not reveal you with the exception of the enemy core. And you can do work and then blink out. Or you could blink in and do work, and then fight your way out or blink back. You'll see. So that's his basic abilities. He's got 2 heroics. The one by far that I've seen used the most is Void Prison. It's a mana cost of 100 with a cooldown of 100 seconds. You can see they're both the same mana cost, the same cooldown. Void Prison traps all targets with the exception of Zeratul, making them become invulnerable. It's a time block, kind of a time stop. Everything stops. Your cooldowns stop. If you're in a terror, the cooldown on the timer will stop. It stops everything. And it can actually prevent skill shots from landing as well, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. So, if a precision strike's going down, you drop the Void Prison, that precision strike will be nullified. It's good for splitting teams. It's good for catching heroes. It's also useful as an escape. A lot of use in this, and to use it well is really important. And another important thing to note about Void Prison is first, it's your R, it's your heroic. So you use R to use it, and after you've cast it, after about a second, it lasts for 5. After 1 second, you can cancel it early with another click on the R, which is really important. If you're those, like I said, those skill shots are mistimed, they're going to land before the time runs out. You can cancel it yourself to kind of speed up the whole process. Then there's Shadow Assault, and this is more of an attack Zeratul kind of thing. Basic attacks, you charge towards enemies. they have lifesteal, and you attack faster. You get a 20% attack speed boost. A really cool talent nonetheless. Not one you see as much. You will have to use this when you're talent gated, of course. It's really good for going one-on-ones and kind of chasing heroes down, not letting them escape. Has a lot of use there. So those are the basic abilities. Let's just talk about Zeratul himself a little bit before we get into the talents. He has a large health pool here. He's got 820 hit points at level 1, second to Kerrigan in the Assassin Club at 830. So he's 10 less than Kerrigan at level 1. At level 20, he's 3,385, tied with Tychus for second most, again behind Kerrigan, who has 3,680. So what is that, just 295 that he is short of being the top assassin as far as health pool goes. Of course, we're not counting Raynor's passive in here at all, but he has quite a big chunk of health for an assassin. His damage is also high as well. He's got 47 damage basic attack at level 1 with 13, the most of any assassin for both. The base 47 and the 13 per level, going up to 294 at level 20. That's just a huge amount of damage. The next closest is going to be Raynor with 268 basic attack damage at level 20. He has 40 to begin with and 12 per level. So you can see he's getting 1 more per level than Raynor, and he starts out with 7 more basic attack damage. A ton of damage coming out of this guy, not just from the auto attacks, but also from the abilities. And now a little bit more about the build we're going to do is an ability power build. It's a cooldown based build. It's not an auto attack build. We're not building the right click like we do with Raynor. We're actually building up his abilities and the spell damage kind of things, and it's going to be a really cool build. It's a lot of fun to use. You can use it in pretty much any game with a few tweaks here and there. And just before we do get into the talents, I do want to just look at the other things. The health pool, I mean, we said he's very high for an assassin, right? 820. That puts him in the top half of health pools. He's got more than a Nubarak to start with at level 1, okay? I'm trying to think. I think that's the only tank he's got more than, but he's more than most specialists. He's behind a few of the supports there at level 1, but he's got a ton of health. And then even at level 20, we're looking here. I have to find him. He's a little bit lower down at level 20. He doesn't scale as well as some of the other ones. He's of course above most of the assassins and a couple of the specialists, but you know, starting out in the early game, a ton of health. It kind of fades towards the late game, but the way we're going to be using him, you don't want to stick around too long in the fights. And so let's go ahead, break down these talents just a little bit. Sorry, I'm juggling between a couple different spreadsheets here. Alright, so we're on the talents. We're at level 1. This is the most free form level right here. You can do a lot of things at level 1, depending on the map, depending on the team comps. And this is where you'll get most of your disagreement on how to build Zeratul. I think you'll see some other builds out there that maybe build the auto attacks a little bit more damage focused than what we're going to do here, but this build really emphasizes mobility. And here you can choose based on the map and the team comp. If I'm going up against a Nova, I love taking block. Periodically reduce the damage received from hero basic attacks by 50%, and you get 2 charges. It's also good against another Zeratul. So there's a lot of potential here depending on the comp. If there's somebody with a huge, basic attack like that Nova with triple tap, this block comes in handy. Greater Cleave, another great one. You'll see this one used probably the most. It's got increases the radius of his Q, his cleave, by 33%. It allows you to catch multiple heroes. Remember, at level 20, you're going to be dealing almost 400 damage, just basic cleave, not with any bonuses that we'll get into later. And catching multiple heroes with that, it's going to do a ton of damage. So Greater Cleave is probably your standby here. Block, situational. Rapid displacement is another good one. It reduces the cooldown of Blink by 1.5 seconds, which is really handy. You're talking a Blink, Blink's cooldown is 10 seconds, taking off 15% of that. This is good on maps like Cursed Hollow, Garden of Terror, where there's a lot of blinking to be done. Those are the 2 maps where I might choose this. And again, it depends on the comp. If they have a Stitches, you might need that blink a little bit more. If there's like a good hard catch, if they have a lot of CC and you need that blink to escape from it, that's where the rapid displacement really comes in handy. Now, the one that you probably don't see the most are the bottom 2, Regeneration and Seasoned. And a large part, we'll go with Seasoned first. The large part of you don't see Seasoned as much is that you don't really lane with Zeratul. You do a lot of roaming, a lot of ganking, and picking off targets that don't see you coming. And that's why Seasoned doesn't benefit as much. You don't benefit as much from that because you're not going to be around getting the stacks in the lane. If for some reason you're on like a 2-lane map like Haunted Mines, or the team comp that you're running, you run into in solo queue, it forces you to lane, you could definitely take this. He's already got a ton of damage, and it will scale up nicely if you're laning. But that's a really rare circumstance that I would take this. It is viable again in that niche pick. And Regeneration Master, I like this on a couple maps, namely Black Hearts, where there are a lot of small camps, and you're going to be roaming constantly, getting coins. And of course, the 2 lanes on the top of the map are also close together. You can get a lot of regeneration globes. And at the end of the game, you're going to have over 40 health per second if you do this right, which is insane. You know, people will say, never take this. You should take block first, always over regen. But like on the right map, maybe Garden of Terror sometimes, but definitely Black Hearts. I love taking this just because I'm roaming so much with him, and I'm getting the doubloon camps over and over again throughout the game that you get so many regen globes. Your health just skyrockets. You can stay out in the map for extended periods. You never really have to go back to heal. And so that's how these kind of break down. Greater Cleave probably being the biggest one if they have like a melee engaged comp, or you know, there's ability to catch multiple heroes with your cleave. It's good rapid displacement when you need it to escape from the enemy team, or on maps like Cursed Hollow and Garden of Terror with all those little nooks and crannies you have to get around. Block against, say, like a Nova or even an enemy Zeratul. If there's a couple enemy assassins you have to worry about taking a lot of basic attack damage from. Regen, I like that, you know, as a niche pick on Black Hearts, sometimes on Garden. And then Seasoned if you're forced into a laning perspective, which is pretty rare. So more often than not, as I'm saying, you'll see Greater Cleave and Rapid Displacement. But that's the big variability in this build right there. The big variable is that level 1 talent. And I'm always like in the beginning of the game, as I'm playing Zeratul, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, what am I gonna take? You know, because it's a lot that goes into it, and sometimes it's flipping a coin between these two, really, a lot of the time. And it kind of depends on your style, how you like to play. I will say the Greater Cleave makes hitting your Q a lot easier because you get that extra range. If you're new to Zeratul, it's definitely an easy thing to go with. Level 4, there's some people you'll see take a Sustained Anomaly. That makes your W actually explode and do area damage regardless of whether it hits a target or not, which is kind of cool. I've occasionally seen the first two, the Focused Attack for the extra damage on your basic attack every 10 seconds, which is a lot on Zeratul. He has a 47 at level 1, so you're talking an extra, was that 20, almost 24 damage, 23 to 24 damage every 10 seconds. And then the Vampiric Assault, which your basic attacks heal, but we're not really building out his basic attack kit. Vorpal Blade, you activate to teleport to the last non-structured target you attacked within 3 seconds. This is good for chasing down enemy heroes that are running away. And I could see maybe taking this in a game where you're going to die a lot, and you need to be able to chase people down. The Vorpal Blade might have its little niche pick there. By and large, though, I go with Gathering Power. It passively grants 8% ability power, and each hero takedown grants a bonus of 2% up to 12. So you get a full 20% with 6 stacks, 6 kills. You get a full extra 20% on your abilities. Now that adds up. When you're doing 400 with the Cleave, 20%, it's 40 plus 40 is 80. It's almost 500 damage on a Q when you have full stacks. Now these do go away when you die. You have to be very careful about not dying and losing your stacks with Gathering Power. And that's why if you're in some kind of team comp where you are dying a lot, you might want to consider taking Vorpal or something of that nature. But really, even that passive 8% is awesome. And so I can't think of a game where I haven't taken it. And that's what I suggest going with, Gathering Power. If you're talent gated, you might have to go with like Focused Attack early on, but then go Gathering Power as soon as you've unlocked it. Level 7. I've seen the occasional First Aid here. You activate to heal 35% of your max health over 6 seconds, which is great, because he is such a weak, flimsy character in that sense of health. He has a low health. I mean, his health is high early game, right, compared to all the heroes. High for an assassin throughout, but then it scales off late game compared to some of the other heroes, and having that First Aid is really cool. I don't personally take it, though. I'm always taking Rending Cleave, which builds up the Q. This goes nicely with the Greater Cleave, in that you're getting the greater radius, right? And now you get an extra 50% damage over 5 seconds. It's a poison. This is used for not only for doing an extra 50% damage to heroes, which, remember, if you're doing a 400 damage with the Cleave, that's an extra 200 damage per Q. But it also is good at clearing minion waves. This comes in handy in a lot of places, and I'm, again, taking this nonstop. It's kind of weird that you think there's a lot of good choices here. You can get an extra 25% additional damage after using an ability, which is a lot. You no longer decloak when using your W, and the range is increased by 20%, and then the basic searing attacks, which is you increase basic attack damage by 50%, and you get the mana cost. So there's a lot of good choices here, but Rend and Cleave, I like this. It's 50% on every single Q from then on throughout the game, and that's why I can't think of a game again where I haven't taken this. Level 10, Void Prison for splitting up the enemy team comps. This is just so good. You can split up their formation and pick off individual targets. It's like divide and conquer strategy. Level 13, this also plays in the mobility, is the Wormhole. What happens with the Wormhole, your blink, right? For 3 seconds after you've blinked, you can activate blink again to return to the point where it was cast from. You can do a lot of sneaky things with this. You can go into a fight, blink in, drop your bomb, your singularity spike, then Q, auto attack, blink back out. And if you're good at this and you've coordinated it well enough, the enemy team won't even be able to attack you. You'll be so fast. And that's why I almost always am going with Wormhole. I think it's viable. The other one I've seen is maybe a giant killer if the enemy team is very tanky and you don't need that escape. You don't need to blink in and blink out. One blink is enough. You could sacrifice mobility for some damage with giant killer. That is definitely an option. And I've seen Assassin's Blade. I think a lot of people really like Assassins. You get that extra 25% damage for 5 seconds when breaking cloak, and a 10% increased move speed while cloaked. That is pretty good. So I would say this might be your choice if you don't need the mobility, but I love the mobility. It just allows, it's so much fun that I'm almost always taking Wormhole. Spell Shield isn't terrible if you're up against, a Zeratul and a Nova and a Falstad, something like that with a lot of ability power, but where you're just having trouble surviving. But the way I play Zeratul, it's blink in, do your damage, blink out, and I never really need a spell shield. I don't use Burning Rage. And like I said, I think Assassin's Blade is probably the better choice of these two. It depends on the team comp, but really Wormhole should be your go-to for that mobility. We'll show that off a lot. Level 16 is where he gets a ton of damage here. By and large, we go with double bombs. After you cast Singularity Spike, you can cast a second one for free within 3 seconds. Remember also, a Singularity Spike slows for 3 seconds. That's very important. You get to cast 2 and the slows will add on to one another. So if you need to slow your target down a lot, don't cast them right away. But this is an insane amount of burst with both of these together and your cleave. You're able to blink in, drop both bombs, cleave, auto attack, blink back out, and you can kill a hero. That's not, like say, not a full health hero. You can completely eliminate them from the game. And I can't really think of a game where I haven't seen double bombs taken. You get an extra 40% damage with the Executioner, 30% increased damage if you use the Q while you're cloaked, 40% attack speed and move speed's increased. But I think double bombs is almost always agreed upon in almost every case by Zeratul, so that's what we choose here. And then level 20, adding to that mobility, we will go with Bolt of the Storm. You activate to teleport to a nearby location. This is shared among many heroes. It's a generic talent, and nothing special here, except that if you've taken Blink and Wormhole, you can blink somewhere, you can blink again with Bolt, and then you can blink back to your starting location using the Wormhole talent. And it's just amazing the mobility you get from this. You can pick people off and escape quite easily. This is really like an extra life or a mini Resurgence of the Storm on a 40-second cooldown. I can't say enough good things about this. I've heard people argue that Protective Prison is good. What this does is, your Void Prison will trap enemies and allies alike. It just won't trap you. With Protective Prison, your teammates are no longer affected by Void Prison. Kind of useful for setting up combos. And if you go with Nerazim Fury, you get an extra 30% lifesteal, and the duration's increased by 50% on your your Shadow Assault. So I guess if you went with Shadow Assault, you could do the Nerazim Fury. But ideally, really, it's blink, blink, the Bolt. I mean, Bolt of the Storm. That's what I'm going with here. So just to recap real quick, this depends on the team comp. By and large, Greater Cleave or Rapid Displacement with the occasional block or maybe the regen. Depends on the team comp. Gathering Power on 4, Rending Cleave on 7, Void Prison on 10, Wormhole on 13 with an occasional, maybe an Assassin's Blade if you don't need that mobility, Double Bombs on 16, and then the Bolt of the Storm here on 20. And it's a lot of fun to play Zeratul. We're going to show him off now, get in the game, and check out his mobility.